Hi guys, today we're going to talk about it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is. It doesn't matter what your disability is. I'm going to go through a framework that kind of gives you light in the darkness, that gives you a framework to follow no matter what your disability is. These are the steps you have to follow, and these are the steps that you follow if you're dyslexia, if you're autism, if you've got ADHD, if you've got dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all these different things. You follow the same step-by-step framework. Now, these are fundamental principles you can use to maximize it, to understand, look, what control is it having over you so you can start controlling it. I feel I've been nerding over this for a little while, and I really feel it'll be really valuable. And please, guys, it means a lot to me if you subscribe, if you leave a comment, if you share this, because you know it will help other people. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed today's episode. So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. Hello guys, and I hope you're doing good. I'm really excited to be back here, to be back speaking on this, and to be back connecting with you. And I'm very, very excited, and I've missed this. To be honest, I've missed this a lot because during Christmas break, for that 2 weeks I was off, I didn't do it as much. Maybe done a few, but I'm nowhere near as much as maybe what I should have, and maybe what I would have liked to. But I'm so excited we're back, and we're back, I think, personally for me, because now I'm into a bit more routine now. Because beforehand, like, as we're going through Christmas break, things just go everywhere, and especially like you're stuck inside the whole time, and I find it really difficult to go out there and to be as productive, as good as possible. But now I'm in a bit of routine. I love it. I've got my fire back. I've got the passion back. And anyway, I want to talk to us today. It's very, 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 very valuable what I feel today is. I want to talk to us basically saying about, look, it doesn't matter what your disability is. And what we can want to talk to is basically like a framework, a very, very bare bones framework of, look, it doesn't matter what your disability is. Now, when I use the term disability, I'll put quotation marks around it. Because disability does not mean it disables you in certain ways. It's just commonly seen as a disability. It could be a physical disability. It could be a learning disability. It could be like a disability. Say, I had a dysfunctional family or childhood when growing up. But anyway, I'll use the term disability very, very loosely here. I do not think disability kind of, if we use this term disability, it traps us. But I want to walk us through a framework that basically I came out of nowhere, but I've been writing it down over and over and over again. I've been thinking about it, saying this is not false. This cannot be wrong. And I think so many people oftentimes feel like they've got so much going on, feel like so much is against them, feel like they have so many problems come from left to right, about work, about home, all these challenges they're facing. And so often what people feel like, they feel like they're going through their own struggle, and they feel like, look, what's the guide? What's the manual? What's the teaching? What do I do to deal with these challenges? And like, if we go out there and we find out, okay, how to deal with dyslexia and all these things, yes, great stuff. But oftentimes it's about, okay, what is dyslexia? And oftentimes it's very, very, very specific and niche about, okay, how to get diagnosed with this, how to help people with English on this. Okay, yes, listen to this video teaching you about how your brain works and all this, and it doesn't really help you solve individual problems and help you be able to use this framework to be able to solve the problems you have in your own life. So what I feel these people need, and this is why I even thought about it, is basically like a guiding light, a guiding force saying, okay, this is my quote unquote disability, how am I going to apply it in this life? And this is how it's going to work. So basically, you have, okay, this is how it's going to work. So it's not going to use me so I can use it. So it's not going to be something that controls my life, because I have the framework of how disabilities, basically works, and how I can work in it. Now, it doesn't matter what disability it is. And this is how basically human beings adapt in life and when it comes to challenges, and how disabilities work and how to basically overcome problems. And it was funny. I remember, because basically over Christmas my sleeping pattern was so mucked up. We went to bed like, I couldn't go sleep last night. I went to bed really late, and I got stupidly early. Well, I like getting up early to working and all this stuff before I go to work. But basically I had a pattern of always go to bed late. Have you had that, when you just mucked up your sleeping pattern? You're just like, oh, I always get up tired. I always get up, I always get up like 11 a.m. or at midday, and you go to bed late, and you get into that pattern of that, and it's really hard to break yourself out of that pattern without any external influence, with just sort of like trying to reel yourself, and oftentimes there's no motivation to get yourself. Well, I was in that place. I was like, I don't care, I like staying up late, I can work late, I can do all these different things. And then my sleeping patterns got more and more mucked up. And I remember one day I had enough, I wanted to get up early, so I decided to go to bed early. The bad idea, because I couldn't go sleep. I remember, have you had that when you just can't go sleep, so you just try to watch things on your iPad? Like I was watching basically podcasts on my iPad, or videos on my iPad, some entertainment thing, that I could just pass time before I was tired enough to go to sleep. Anyway, I was watching this, I was listening to it, and I was thinking in my head, something just, like a thought came in my head. And okay, what's the framework to help someone who has a so-called disability? What's the framework? It doesn't matter what your so-called disability is. What's the framework to do that? And because what I learned through doing a lot of my research, helping other people, is that there's basic principles you have to understand. No matter what your disability is, basically people love to complex their disability. People love to say, oh no, it's this label, it's this diagnosis. How I look at it, at disability, learning disabilities or whatever, is it doesn't matter what someone diagnosed you with. It only matters of what you are experiencing. It only matters of what you find hard and what you find easy. That's the only things that matters. And basically say, okay, I find these things hard because with dyslexia, some people find it easy, find it fine to read. Some people find sense of direction easy. Some people, can do this, can do that. But other people think this is the worst thing ever, but yet they're diagnosed with the same thing. Because dyslexia is very, very, very broad. But dyslexia is only a name to describe a certain group of people who are so diverse in basically their brain and the way of acting that they're called a special name. Because if they weren't as intelligent as they are, if you weren't having an IQ of average or above average, they wouldn't be called dyslexia. They'd be called something else, which is kind of worse than dyslexia. Basically the people, there's a term for them called garden variety. But what I'm saying is, look, what a disability is it doesn't matter what someone diagnosed you. It doesn't matter the definition of it. It doesn't matter this. It doesn't matter that. It doesn't what matters is what you are experiencing right now. What you're experiencing in your life. How does this thing show up in your life? Does it show up in some beautiful ways like strengths or some challenges? How does it show up in life? And we have to deal with it with that. Okay, so what's the framework to deal with these challenges? And there's two core elements to it, and this is the same no matter what disability you have. And every time I use that word disability, I feel my skin cooling out of me, but I'm just keeping you for this so we kind of stay on the same track. So there's two halves to this, and you always have to start with the first part and go to the second part. The first part of it is basically, there's a couple steps. The first part of it is basically realizing, look, you've got to deal with this. You've got to take responsibility of this, and you've got to realize that your thoughts, your beliefs, your basic emotions are driving your actions, are driving the experience of the disability so much more than disability itself. So this may seem kind of maybe new, maybe it seem a bit overwhelming, maybe it seem like, oh, what's this? This is like this. What's Theo saying? He sounds a bit weird. But what I mean by this is basically okay, you have dyslexia, but you have to realize that your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs how you act day to day dictate the severity of your dyslexia way much more than what you're born with. Because if you act in a way where you're committed, you find the strategies, you believe in yourself, you're confident, you go out there and you do things, you're way much more capable to deal with the challenges that dyslexia gives you, compared to if you let all the challenges of dyslexia hold you back and limit you. And I'm not saying that it's easy to do this and you're completely wrong to be held back and be limited. I'm not saying that. But basically I'm saying, okay, first step number one is you have to take responsibility that this is yours to deal with. Doesn't matter what disability you have, okay? First step, take responsibility. This is what you have to deal with. This is what you have to deal with okay, whatever challenges you're facing, it's up to you to deal with it. And ultimately, you are the creator of your experience of life. You know what I mean? Like, you can make this thing better. You can improve upon this. But you have to work on it. You have to make it better. So step number one, take responsibility of your experience of that thing. And realize it's only you that's going to improve it, okay? Step number two, okay? Now these are big, giant steps that I go in great detail on. I'm just covering the framework here, okay? Step number two, because if you're like, oh, this is good, but how do I use this? That's more detailed, but I'm teaching the framework here so it can guide you instead of you just being in the dark all the time. Step number two is realize that the things that limits you, like I language it like this, the worst thing about your disability isn't the disability itself, it's what you believe about that disability. Because think about this, it's what you believe about yourself. It's if you think you can, if you think you can't. It's that, oh, I won't be able to improve it, and oh, I'm not this sort of person, oh, I can't do that, I'll never be able to do that. Your beliefs are your biggest limitations. You're like limiting beliefs, you're limiting, thoughts, you're limiting stories you have about yourself. It's what's keeping you from getting there. Because you're limiting story about your dyslexia, you're limiting story about your diagnosis, you're limiting story about this thing is keeping you from improving. Now, it's not the only thing, but it's a major thing. And if you work on it, like identifying what this limiting thing is, and then creating a plan of improving it, okay? Now, step number three. Step number three is really, really critical. It's basically about distinguishing what's your emotions and what's the actual reality of it. Because, for example, I remember I was at this, I can't remember what event it was, basically this woman come up and sharing some stories, and she said, oh, I got, when I was younger, my uncle did horrible things to her. I don't want to go in detail here, but you can imagine what sort of things. And she was like, it's the first time I've ever said this, and start crying massively. And then it was like a room of 100, 200 people. And what this woman on the stage, because like she's trained to deal with these things, that's what's supposed to happen. Now, what's she done? She listened to these things, and what she's done is like, because there's a lot of training leading up to this, but she drew two big circles on the board. And one said, what happened? And another one said, meaning. Okay, listen to me very carefully. And so you see kept going over, okay? So he said, I don't want to know the emotional side of it. I don't know what you decided it to mean to you. Because this is what we do with all our dyslexia or disability. We have an experience, and then we mean something to us, and then we recall that meaning like reality. But actually, it's not what happened, it's what we made it mean to ourselves. So, she kept on asking you, okay, what happened? What happened? What happened? And it took about 10 questions saying what happened before she actually told her the exact things that happened. Because we always tell a story in ourselves about like what we think's happened, or what we made up in our heads. And about like this, like 45 minutes of this going on, she realised something. She like realised, oh my God, I'm making this up all in my head. What's actually happened is this. What I made up is this, and her shoulders dropped, her breathing, properly breathe, and she finally let go of this thing. And it was emotional, and it was incredible. But that's what we have to do with our diagnosis. We have to distinguish, okay, what does it mean to us? Like, what's the meaning we create in our head, and what it actually is? And the way you do this is by thinking, okay, like for example, I'm born with dyslexia. I'm born with it. And so reading, writing, finding a sense of direction, these challenges I was born with. So to write down, okay, what things are you born with specifically? And not like, for example, not all the things that you may think, I can never improve this, I'm the worst ever at this. To say, I find this hard, I find this specific task hard, I find this specific task hard. And the more specific you can get about what you find hard, the better. And it's about, okay, what you find hard, not about what you feel, what you believe, and what you think about other people. Okay, it's only about you. And the other thing, about meaning. When people discriminate against you, when people think that the world isn't designed for dyslexics, when you think all these things, that's in the meaning bowl. And guess what? Dyslexia is ultimately a meaning. It's a label we tell ourselves. You mean dyslexia isn't in nature in terms of like, dyslexia is this real thing that's happened. What dyslexia? It's just basically people are different, and then we call that different a name because it's so much more different than everything else. So we made up the label of dyslexia. Therefore, it's part of our meaning. But how are we actually different, and what meaning? Because once we differentiate the two, we can free ourselves up from the trap of like feeling all these negative things, and also it's this. And also this is really good because so many times we go after what like we've been trying to improve all our life, our reading, our writing, social skills, all this sort of other stuff. But actually, what's keeping us back is our limiting beliefs in ourselves. But anyway, so those are the first part. One is basically it's dealing with ourselves. Same 3 steps, no matter what it is. Take responsibility of it. Realizing, look, you're the one that's limiting you. The only one stopping you is you. And step number 3, differentiating between what you can do, like the reality and the meaning you made up. That's part 1. When we go to part 2, we'll be talking about basically we look at your disability. Directly as disability, and what your disability is yes, there's some strengths there, but ultimately it's called a disability because there's challenges there. And now I don't care what challenge you have, you can solve it. Let me repeat that again. I don't care what challenge you have, you can solve it. How can you solve it? There's three ultimately like solutions to your problems. And these 3 solutions, like no matter what problem you have, you can do one of these 3 solutions and it would solve that problem. Now, what one you do is dependent on you, and it's dependent to what is available out there for you to get. But you can solve a problem. You can. It's no problem you can't solve. Right? You may have had all the best help, all the best support, or tried like crazy to learn to read heaven, until I tried this one method I never heard about before, never seen before. I tried it, and now I could read. Okay, crazy. But every problem is solvable. It's 3 ways. First way, most common way of solving a problem is a workaround. What's a workaround? For example, you've lost your legs. There's people that's lost their legs that can still drive a car. Why? They worked around it. They create attachments and things, and you mean this and this. You mean like, for example, a person wants to, not arms and legs, wants to jump out of a plane in a parachute. Okay, so there's work on a problem. Attach yourself to a guy. It's like, for example, with dyslexics. Oh, you want to read there's an exam English, but you got help. Oh, we can have a reader, we can have a writer, we can have this, we can have that. There's workarounds to problems, and majority of your problems, the way you solve them is you work around them. You work around them. For example, you need to read this book. Instead of reading the book, you do an audiobook. It's a workaround. So the first way you can solve a problem is you can work around it. You don't solve it, you work around it. So you get the desired outcome. For example, you're reading this book because you have to understand it. The desired outcome is for you to understand it so you can recall it back in this meeting. Not, I want you to read every single word of this book. Why? Because I want you to do so. The outcome isn't to read it, the outcome is to learn the information in it. So you create a workaround to get the outcome and oftentimes change your approach to get there. Dyslexics are very, 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 very good at this. But far too often we make a workaround and that's actually avoidance rather than having the same outcome. For example, with work, you'd have a workaround, make an excuse, call in sick, do this, do that, to not get the outcome, but kind of like excuse yourself so you never had to get the outcome. Okay, I hope you follow me. So, first way, work around it. Second way, solve the damn problem. Solve it. For example, with my reading, I solved that problem. Now, like solving the problem is quite rare because so oftentimes, well, it depends what level you are, but so oftentimes without disabilities, with reading, writing, this, that, to solve the problem would take an incredible amount of work. But I believe there's always a strategy there. You mean if someone else has done it somewhere in the world, then you can do it. Someone else has done it, like with dyslexia, very severe, learnt to read fluently and had these sentences before in the past. Now they're like this. You can learn to do it by following the same strategy. Me with reading, great example, had all the help. You still could read very, very, very slow, but I learnt one strategy that worked, and it changed everything for me. Now my handwriting still works, my spelling is still poor, but yeah, I worked really hard on my spelling, like 170 plus days of like improving my English, having dyslexia in a row, and my spelling was still at a certain level. It was a lot better, but still poor, nowhere at the level I wanted it to be. But the idea is, guys, that you solve the problem. You mean you can either there's a workaround, but I don't want to go workaround. I want to head towards this and solve this problem. I talk about this a lot in terms of muck up your dyslexia. Go to war with your dyslexia. Get angry about your dyslexia, like you're in the ring with your dyslexia. Because if you're still alive, you ain't down for the count. You can go up and you can fight against it. So I'm not going to let you stop me. I'm not going to let you win this battle anymore. And then you go against it. Like you work really hard. You're going to get that C in English. You're going to do that thing. You're solving the problem. You're not working around it. You're solving the problem. Okay? That's the second way. Now the third way. The third way is so critically important, and it's changed your basically it changed the meaning of it. So it changed the way it says it to you. So basically it changed the meaning of it. For example, when it's raining outside, can you work and you have to go for a walk? You have to go for a walk. Can you, like for example, you're outside and it's pouring down raining. Can you work around it? Unless you have an umbrella, unless you have these things. But yeah, you may have an umbrella, but it's still raining. It's still horrible. So you can't work around it. Can you solve it? Can you stop it raining? No, you can't stop it raining. Unless you're God or whatever, but you can't stop it raining, okay? So the third option, change your approach. Get happy that you're in the rain. Get happy that why would it make you miserable? What about water touching your skin makes you miserable? What? Is it because it's cold? Why would that make you miserable? There's people that's cold weather that's happy. So why does it have to make you miserable? You can decide for it to be happy. To make you happy, to look at it a certain way, see it a certain point of view, and to make you happy. I used to hate being in the rain, hate the cold, but I just changed my view on it and focus on different things, and I can enjoy the rain. It feels refreshing, it feels alive. So you're changing your view on it, and that's what you can do with reading. That's what you can do with writing. Oftentimes, accept it. Accept it okay, this is the way it is, and I'm not saying that it's impossible to improve, it's impossible to do these things, but it is the way it is, and I'm completely happy with that. It does not affect me emotionally or stop me in my life in any way. Okay? So those are 3 ways of solving the problem, and then have a little drink. And finally, guys, so here are the 2 frameworks. Part 1, you understand yourself, take responsibility, realize you are the only thing stopping you, and differentiating between what's reality and what you made up. Part 2, solving the problem. 3 ways: work around it, solve it, or basically change your opinion on it, change your view. And then also part number 3. Now this part is be able to live a better life because of it. There's so many people here that's got so incredible disabilities, but yeah, living so much more better life than 99% of the population. Why? It's not because they have more resources, it's because they do more of what they have. It's because they let this thing, for example, with dyslexia. Guess with dyslexia we can use it. Okay? So that's part number 3. But by the way, guys, I'm sorry I just rambled at you for a little while. I'm talking very fast, but I've been writing this idea down over and speaking to it about a lot of people, and I really feel this can give you a light when you're going through the darkness, a light when you're going through this journey. And guys, in a week's time, I'm going to launch something I'm really, 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 really excited about. And I'm getting a lot of other people, a lot of other dyslexic speakers together to do something very, very excited. I've already got them together, and it's just time for me to announce it soon. Anyway, guys, I hope you had a good one. Take care, and bye.